All right, so Hollywood has been lying to you about space for decades, and somehow we all just believed it. Every single space movie you've ever watched is basically a science fiction fantasy that ignores actual physics.
I'm about to give you 10 things that sci-fi movies get completely wrong about space, and it's gonna ruin your favorite films.
Hit subscribe because once you know this stuff, you can't unknow it, and you're going to be annoyed at every space scene forever. All right, number one, explosions in space don't look like giant fireballs.
Movies show these massive orange explosions with flames everywhere like a gas station blew up. But space has no oxygen, so unless the ship's own oxygen tanks rupture, there is nothing to sustain a fire.
It is basically like trying to start a campfire underwater and expecting a bonfire. What actually happens is a brief flash and then nothing, because fire needs oxygen to exist and space is a vacuum. Hollywood just ignores this because apparently a realistic flash doesn't look cool enough for their special effects budget. Every space battle scene you've ever seen is scientifically impossible, but they keep doing it anyway. The Death Star explosion in Star Wars would have been a quick burst of light and debris, not a slow-motion fireball. But that doesn't sell movie tickets, so they gaslight audiences into thinking space has air. Your brain has been trained by decades of movies to expect fire in a place where fire cannot exist. Number two, you cannot hear anything in space, but movies act like it's a rock concert. Every space movie has laser sounds and engine roars and explosions going off like it's the 4th of July. Space is a vacuum, which means there's no air, and sound needs air to travel. It is basically like screaming in a room with no atmosphere and expecting everyone to hear you. In reality, if you were floating next to an exploding spaceship, you would hear absolutely nothing. Complete silence while you watch destruction happen, which is actually way more terrifying than Hollywood realizes. But silence doesn't keep audiences engaged, so they add sound effects that physically cannot exist. Star Wars lightsaber sounds are iconic, but in real space, they would be completely silent.
Even the Millennium Falcon flying by would make zero noise because there's no medium for sound waves to move through. Directors know this is wrong, but they do it anyway because apparently accurate physics is boring. So every space battle you've ever enjoyed is a lie designed to keep you entertained.
Number three, taking your helmet off in space doesn't freeze you instantly like movies show. Hollywood loves the dramatic scene where someone removes their helmet and immediately turns into a popsicle. What actually happens is way worse than freezing. Your body doesn't transfer heat fast enough to freeze quickly because there's no air to conduct the cold. Instead, you suffocate within seconds because your lungs have no oxygen. But here's where it gets brutal. The lack of pressure makes the water in your body start to boil. It is basically like being in a nightmare where you're choking and cooking from the inside at the same time. Your blood doesn't boil, but the saliva on your tongue and moisture in your lungs absolutely does. Movies skip this part because showing someone suffocating while their spit boils is apparently too disturbing for audiences. So they went with the cleaner Hollywood version of instant freezing, which is completely wrong. Space doesn't kill you with cold, it kills you with pressure and oxygen deprivation. Number four, asteroid fields are not dense obstacle courses like Star Wars makes them look. Movies show pilots dodging hundreds of giant rocks every second like it's a video game. In reality, asteroids are miles apart from each other. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter has so much space between rocks that you could fly through blindfolded and probably never hit anything. It is basically like throwing a handful of pebbles across an entire football stadium and then being scared you'll hit one. NASA has sent multiple spacecraft through the asteroid belt and none of them had to dodge anything. They just flew straight through because space is mostly empty. But that doesn't make for exciting cinema, so Hollywood invented dense rock fields that don't exist. The odds of randomly hitting an asteroid are basically zero, but Han Solo acts like he's threading a needle. Even if you tried to hit an asteroid on purpose, you'd have to aim for it because they're so spread out.
Number 5. Artificial gravity doesn't work the way movies pretend it does. Every spaceship has people walking around like they're on Earth because there's magically gravity plating in the floor. That technology does not exist. The only way to create artificial gravity is by spinning the ship, which uses centrifugal force to push you against the walls. It is basically like being inside a rotating drum where the floor becomes the outer wall. Movies skip this because showing everyone walking sideways on the spinning ship is confusing for audiences. So they invented gravity plating, which is pure science fiction with no basis in reality. The Enterprise has artificial gravity generators that somehow work without spinning, and physics just cries in the corner. Even the Death Star has normal gravity everywhere, despite being a stationary sphere. Real spacecraft keep astronauts floating because we haven't invented magic floor panels that create gravity. Directors know this, but building rotating sets is expensive, so they just ignore physics entirely. Number 6. You cannot see laser beams traveling through space like movies show. Every sci-fi battle has colorful laser bolts flying across the screen like tracers. Light moves at 186,000 miles per second, so you wouldn't see the beam travel, you'd just see it hit the target instantly. It is basically like trying to watch light turn on in your room and seeing the photons fly from the switch to the bulb. That doesn't happen because light is too fast for human eyes to track. Also, lasers in a vacuum are invisible because there's no dust or particles to reflect the light. On Earth, you can see laser pointers because the beam reflects off air molecules and dust. Space has none of that, so the laser would be completely invisible until it hits something. Star Wars blasters would just be silent, invisible, instant hits with no travel time. But audiences need to see the action, so Hollywood invents slow-moving, visible laser beams that break every law of physics. Number 7. Black holes don't just suck you in like a vacuum cleaner. Movies show people getting close to a black hole and immediately falling in like water down a drain. What actually happens is called spaghettification, and it's way more disturbing. The gravity difference between your head and your feet becomes so extreme that it stretches you vertically into a thin strand. It is basically like being pulled through a pasta maker while gravity tears your atoms apart molecule by molecule. For smaller black holes, this happens before you even reach the event horizon. Your body gets stretched into a long noodle of individual atoms while you're still technically alive for part of it. Movies skip this graphic reality and just show people falling in dramatically. Interstellar got closer to the truth, but even that film didn't fully show the horrifying stretching process. The tidal forces are so strong that no human body could remain intact, so every black hole scene you've watched has spared you from seeing what actually happens to matter near the event horizon. Number 8. You cannot swim through the air in zero gravity like movies show. If you're floating in the middle of a room with nothing to grab, you are completely stuck there. Movies show astronauts flapping their arms and moving around like they're underwater. That doesn't work because there's no air resistance to push against. Swimming requires water or air to be dense enough to create resistance when you move. In zero gravity, the air is too thin to provide any push, so waving your arms does absolutely nothing. It is basically like trying to swim in an empty room on Earth and expecting to fly. The only way to move is by throwing something in the opposite direction or waiting until you drift into a wall. Real astronauts on the ISS have gotten stuck floating and had to wait for air currents or call for help. But Hollywood shows people gracefully swimming through spacecraft because physics doesn't sell tickets. Number 9. Spacesuits are not flexible action suits like movies show. Hollywood has astronauts doing parkour and fighting in spacesuits like they're wearing gym clothes. Real spacesuits are pressurized balloons filled with air to keep you alive. They're bulky, stiff, and incredibly difficult to move in. It is basically like trying to do karate while wearing an inflated tire around your entire body. NASA astronauts train for months just to learn how to walk and grab things in a spacesuit without falling over. Your fingers barely bend because the gloves are pressurized, so picking up a screwdriver is a genuine challenge. Movies show people running and jumping in spacesuits, which is physically impossible. The suit fights against every movement because the internal pressure wants to keep the shape of a balloon. Gravity makes it worse because now you're carrying extra weight while fighting against inflation. So every action scene in a spacesuit is complete fiction, designed to look cool while ignoring basic physics. Number 10. Re-entry is not a smooth airplane landing like movies show. Coming back to Earth from space is violent, hot, and genuinely terrifying. You're hitting the atmosphere at over 17,000 miles per hour, and the friction creates temperatures around 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It is basically like belly flopping onto a concrete surface from orbit while your spacecraft turns into a meteor. The heat shield is the only thing between you and becoming a fireball.
The G-forces during re-entry are brutal, and astronauts describe feeling like an elephant is sitting on their chest. You're rattling and shaking so hard that you can't read instruments or even speak clearly. Movies show pilots calmly gliding shuttles down to a runway like it's a commercial flight. Reality is you're inside a screaming fireball hoping your heat shield holds while experiencing multiple Gs of force. The space shuttle's heat tiles had to be individually inspected after every flight because re-entry damages them. One missing tile on Columbia caused the entire shuttle to disintegrate, killing everyone on board. So when movies show easy breezy landings from space, they're skipping the most dangerous part of the entire mission. That wraps it up. Drop a comment and let me know which one surprised you. Hit subscribe for more of these. I'll be making similar videos, so check out the channel. See you next time.